Our chief Australian correspondent, Avi Yamini, is in Israel along with our courageous videographer, Benji. They both have bulletproof vests and helmets, and we're hoping that keeps them safe. The war has not been joined fully by Israel yet. They've been waiting, and apparently Avi has the latest on that. Let's go to him now live, where it is already nighttime in Israel. Avi, nice to see you again.
Thanks, Ezra. Yeah, so
Um,
there is breaking news as we come to air tonight. Just moments ago, it's been reported that Hamas is there's an agreement made where Hamas is about to release 50 dual citizens. I'm guessing that that's all the dual citizens. So that's about a quarter of the known hostages. There's 210 that's known. There's also, keep in mind, there's 100 to 200 Israelis still missing, unconfirmed whether they're dead somewhere in this southern Israel on the border or within Gaza, or they're also hostages. But there's at least 210 confirmed hostages, minus 50 that will be released, which explains why they haven't entered yet, and it makes a lot more sense to people here on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bizarre situation to be talking about civilian hostages. In wars, prisoners of war are captured all the time, and they're treated in certain ways. They have certain rights that are protected. They're not treated as criminals, by the way. They're just detained until the hostilities are over. But it is unprecedented. In fact, it is not considered war to take civilian casualties. That is terrorism, barbarism. The Latin term in law is humanae hostis, which means it's basically being a pirate. It's being an odious terrorist. And the fact that the West is negotiating with these terrorists is so unusual, but it's being treated as sort of normal, isn't it? I mean, this, quote, war between a nation and a terrorist group, and you have Secretary of State Blinken negotiating and splitting the difference. It's just so weird that we consider this normal, I guess.
Yeah, it is, isn't it, Ezra? And the fact that there's still news networks out there that will refuse to call them terrorists when they're literally still holding 210, at least 210 hostages, only a couple of kilometers from here. We're 600 meters from the border. It's really quiet at the moment. So that could have something to do with this latest announcement and the process of it happening. I do imagine if that is all the dual citizens, which it makes sense it is, it's about a quarter of the hostages. So if that is all the dual citizens, I imagine we're going to see that entrance into Gaza soon after that. The night, Saturday night, Friday night, the night that was rumored that the IDF forces would enter, and in the 11th hour, the first two American citizens were released. It was intensive bombardment from Israel, which is what you would expect hours prior to any sort of entrance. So we'll be here. We'll watch this space closely, and I'll tell the viewers, anyone that does want to watch it, while I'm sitting here and waiting to see it unfold, I'm bringing people along on the journey so they can actually tune in live at thetruthaboutthewar.com and watch it unfold with us.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're there, and I'm glad you're safe so far, thank God, and of course take steps to stay safe. I know that's a difficult thing to say in a war zone. Something else happened today that I have not looked at too carefully because I don't think I have the heart for it. There have been skeptics, it would be a positive way of phrasing it, but there have been deniers, sort of like Holocaust deniers, who said, no, the Jews didn't really get massacred by Hamas terrorists. They weren't really raped and tortured. And I understand that today, 200 foreign journalists were shown the most graphic and barbaric evidence. They were asked not to film it because these are children and women and some men who are, who are part of families and who it's a spectacular and horrific news story that ought to be told. But how do you tell that when there's a mother and father crying? So I understand that 200 journalists were shown the most shocking proof firsthand. And I've seen some reports from journalists who were in there that it was just, I'm sure they'll get post-traumatic stress from what they saw. Do you have any news on that, or did you follow that online?
We were invited to that, and I chose specifically not to go because I could see how many journalists were going to it, and because I knew that after the fact, some of these videos will be released anyways. You've got to choose on the ground. Yeah. You've got to choose where you're going to be, especially when you're one team. We're choosing to be here, which interestingly to note for you is this, unlike the space that we were, the vantage point that we were a few nights ago, where we were under a lot of fire, 50 rockets directed at us, and to keep in mind that in this area, the Iron Dome has actually been switched off. That is to save money because it has been evacuated. 30,000 people have been evacuated from this town alone, and similar, there's hundreds of thousands displaced Israelis at the moment living in camp tents, as well as in hotels in across Israel, especially Eilat, but also Ramat Gan. So they've turned off the Iron Dome here, so that because each rocket costs them $60,000 US to basically within that system. So when we were in that spot, there was a lot of rocket fire in our direction, and when we were running backwards and forwards to the protection, to the bunker. But in this spot here is where the media, it's a good vantage point over Gaza. So all that there is Gaza, right? But the media kind of comes here in the day. They get their piece of cameras, or they pre-record, and pretty much, definitely last night we were the only ones left. At the moment, there's there's about 2 other international crews still here. It's only early. It's about 8 p.m. It usually gets quite lively from about now. So it is interesting to note that it is particularly quiet, which I'd speculate has to do with the transfer of those 50 hostages, which would be a logistical operation, because I'm sure they're not keeping the 50 in one space, and we know about the tunnels that are underneath there. So I imagine the next 24 hours is going to be particularly interesting once they are released, and then whether the Israeli Defense Forces are going to move straight in. I find it hard to believe that they're going to wait any more time to negotiate about the rest of them, because I dare say, even if they do manage to get the rest of them, Israel promises their civilians, promises the world, has to show their enemies that this can't happen again. So they need to win this war for so many reasons. They need to dismantle Hamas for several reasons. So I don't imagine Hamas releasing any Israeli soldiers. I can't imagine the horrors they're going through right now, men, women, children, babies in there. I know that the socialist left and the jihadis that are marching in their hundreds of thousands around the world are not talking about that. They're only showing the devastation that is in response to the fact that there are still hostages, to the fact that it's on the streets here. Terrorists 2 weeks ago went house to house looking for Jews to butcher, maim, rape, and kidnap. So I would encourage all the viewers to, if this story does matter to you, and it should matter to you, thetruthaboutthewar.com, you can follow the latest. And we started last night these live feeds where it's very casual. You're watching it with me, and I'm talking to people in the comments, including some trolls, but we've got tonight we're a little bit more prepared because, Ezra, I noticed through this there is a lot of hate in this conversation, and we are outnumbered. We've got the mainstream media, publishing stories based on the word of terrorists, publish them as fact, feeding the army of, just look at the Muslim world. Most of the Muslim world, not all today, but most of the Muslim world, take these opportunities to show their true colors and hate on the Jews. And then on top of that, their unholy alliance with the socialist left, who also hate Jewish state for their own reasons and Jews for their own reasons. So you can feel it. I'm feeling it. My family's feeling it. Everybody's feeling the kind of hate, even the fact that we're doing this. But it's important for people to keep talking about it. And it's important that even in the face of all that hate, to stand up and stand for what is right. It's uncomfortable, even as somebody who has family here, who has served here. I can understand. I've seen so many in the political space who have walked back their support because they're feeling that barrage of hate. But then I want to commend those also that are brave enough to withstand it. And I know that for me, maybe it's easier because I have to care. We're talking about my family's own existence. But for those that don't have a dog in the race, and I think everyone should care, because the fact is, even if you think you don't have a dog in the race, the fact is, as we've seen around the world, they're coming to a city near you, and they come for the Jews first. And then they'll come for each and every one of us in Canada, in Australia, and the US next.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, Avi, thank you for the update there, and thanks for doing journalism around the clock. And I appreciate you being there on behalf of our viewers, because we simply can't trust the mainstream media. I think the hospital story from last week proves that, where Hamas announced that a hospital was destroyed by an Israeli missile. They said 500 were dead. None of those facts were true. The hospital was not destroyed. It wasn't hit at all. There were not 500 dead. It was not an Israeli missile. Apparently, it was a missile from Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and there was a fire in a parking lot. From the BBC to the New York Times on down, every journalist ran with that story, and then politicians ran with that story, including Justin Trudeau, who then took half a week to quote, look into it. And but at that point in time, the lie had spread around the world, and there's absolutely
it's fed this hate.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that 1 billion people in the world believe that lie, because the mainstream media propagated it. Well, Avi, thanks very much. And folks, you can keep an eye on what Avi's doing at thetruthaboutthewar.com. And if you feel moved to do so, please chip in to help cover the cost of his journey, including his personal protection that he's wearing there. Thanks, Avi.
Do you want to start feeling like your pre-COVID self again? You're not alone. The wellness company's Spike Support Formula is an all-natural supplement to help people do just that. It was created by cardiologist Peter McCullough and his expert team of doctors to help the people experiencing effects from COVID and the you-know-what.
Go to twc.health/rebel today.